It is our privilege to introduce Shri Rajiv Pratap Rudy, Honorable Union Minister of State, Independent Charge, Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. In his early tenure, he worked as the Minister of State for Commerce and Industry in 2001 and as the Civil Aviation Minister in 2003. Professionally, he is an academician, a teacher of economics, and also had a stint as a legal counsel. His tenure in civil aviation has witnessed comprehensive aviation reforms in India in a big way, and its footprint can be observed even today. I now invite Shri Rajiv Pratap Rudy, our guest of honor, to deliver his address.
Good morning, everybody. Chief of the Naval Staff, Sunil Raman, former Chief Admiral Dhawan, Senior Admirals, Dr. Vijay, Ambassador, and representatives across the world. I was, when Admiral Dhawan invited me for this, I was wondering where do I fit in, because this is one aspect that possibly is being dealt with the Ministry of Surface Transport, and Mr. Gadkari was there as the chief guest for the occasion. But nonetheless, I'm very happy that now skill figures almost in every aspect of. And to begin with, I must say that first time ever in the history of India after 69 years, the Prime Minister decided to create a separate ministry called the Skills Ministry. It's a startup ministry. I'm just 2 years old. I have to compete with all the ministries across 50 odd departments, 20, 30 ministries which are there. But for the first time in India, we started talking about skills. When I got this assignment, I was to wonder, what do I do, where do I start? And I realized that there were 24 ministries with more than 60 odd schemes, and everyone was doing skilling, but no one. And the biggest challenge for me was to create a framework for skilling which is understandable to all. And no one was even ready to part up with a small space, because every ministry wants to keep with itself whatever it has. And the biggest challenge was creating convergence. But from there we have moved on, and today, because in India there has been something which possibly distinctly has not been realized, but it happened why there was no skills. And a very dismal figure appears there when we say the National Sample Survey Organization talks to the skilled workforce in this country is only 2.5%. Possibly Germany has 74%, UK has 68% of the workforce which is skilled. South Korea has 96%. So it was very rattling for me when I used to see these figures. But at the same time, when this whole ecosystem was created, then I thought, let's look into why and where we went wrong. And it's slightly harsh to speak about it, but post-independence, we had education, because everyone who became important and big and who occupied chairs at the dais, or those who occupied prominent positions in the audience, they were all very educated, whether they joined the NDA or the or any course, or maybe all those who became important in the system, were all those who were educated. So the aspiration was for education, and initially the government of India called it the Ministry of Education. But at some point of time, 20 years later, they said, no, we should have to put skills in it. And then they said human resources, and human resources were put in as part of the skills. But still, skills did not take off, because education had a distinct bias against skills, and because we heard of what professor of botany, professor of zoology, professor of geography, professor of English, but we never heard in this country professor of carpentry or professor of plumbing or professor, because it was never thought it was important. But actually, if you sit in this hall and realize that whatever makes your life beautiful, comfortable, smart, is nothing about education, it's all about skills. The man who's fixed up his podium, the man who has make you look so fit and smart, everything is skills. And that was never felt. But everyone wanted to. Today, if you look at the capacity of the engineering colleges, about 2.3 million engineering colleges, more than 1 million seats are unfilled, because the engineers who are being produced in the colleges today are not employable. And so forth and so on, if you look into every aspect. And the formal system of skilling in this country was through the ITIs, which we have about 13,000. But do you imagine that all those who went to the ITIs is about 2.2 million students today? They were 8th dropouts who were given to skills, or 10th pass who were given to skills for 2 years. The career would end there because there was no equivalence for last 69 years that if they wanted to pursue their studies further, no one even thought that they were worth enough to be qualified or given an equivalence to go for further studies. And it stopped. The first time in the Indian history that skill for ITI students has been made equivalent to matriculation and higher secondary so that they can move further. Now with all this complex situation, and I'm happy that there are about 40 sectors on which we are working, and of course Maritime does not figure that, and I've been discussing with Admiral Dhawan earlier also. But in the skilling ecosystem, we have thought about the short-term skilling, which comes under the National Skills Qualification Framework. And there's a long-term skilling, which is mostly for industry and industrial work, which comes for a 2-year syllabus from the ITIs. Now we have to create a mix and match for that, and how to go about it was the National Skills Qualification Framework. And when we talk about the National Skills Qualification Framework, I would come to a very simple example which not many people in this country would have understood earlier. So we had to give a framework in the country, and there is where all of you come into place. And today when we partner with the armed forces, whether it's the Navy, the Air Force, or the Army, the largest partnership which is growing in the skill sector, most of you may not be aware, is with the armed forces today. India is the 3rd largest armed forces in the world, and about 55 to 60,000 personnel at a very young age retire. And thanks to the former chief of the Navy, Air Force, and Army, and including the Minister, Mr. Parekar, we decided to go. And the biggest challenge which I was facing in the skilling sector was, we have a lot of people in the education sector, we can get people who are graduates, postgraduates for teachers. But we had dearth of trainers. And the Indian Armed Forces had a huge capacity to give us trainers, because 55,000 to 60,000 personnel retire. And I can tell you, ever since, of all the partnership with the various ministries which we have had, the partnership with the armed forces is the most striking, and it is going as the fastest pace, because earlier, if it an army jawan who had many qualifications, whether it was a Topchi or all whatever activities he did, he was never recognized in the civilian framework, his capacity to get into the framework for civil employment. Today we have mapped everything. Today there is an equivalence which has been established, and there is a huge demand. And I recently think the Air Force, the Navy, and the Army, all of them, and the batches which are coming out after having the equivalence being established, and a short, because the armed forces have decided to put last 6 months of their training services for training to match it with the civil system, so that we the largest number of trainers or entrepreneurs which are coming up now is from the armed forces. So radical issues have been emerging. Now coming back to the Navy and this particular foundation which you are there, you see, I would not be able to connect because most of you are naval men, you are officers in that. But put it in abstract, I just recall 4 or 5 instances. When I was traveling to the Key West, I'm sure most of you must have been there. We have crossed more than 400 islands when we go down to southern part of the United States of America. And every time when I go there, thrice I have been there, I look how beautifully they have connected the islands. I think they're also very conscious of the environment. But 1,000 kilometers away from our mainland, with 1,300 islands, we can't touch them. And possibly those islands which exist in the southeastern part of this country is good enough as far as tourism is concerned to take care of the entire wealth of the country. But we cannot connect it. I'm a politician. I realize that if that is possible in the Key West, which has almost a similar pattern of islands, and 400 of them or 300 of them, and you keep crossing, we cannot tap the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. There's one question. When you talk about the Maritime Foundation, the blue economy, I've heard that there is a representative from Seychelles here. So the Prime Minister, you are there. Okay. So usually I don't read much, but whenever we have to, the Prime Minister asks us to visit a couple of countries in this. And I believe the fastest growing economy in the African countries is Seychelles. Well, there is a Prime Minister, there is a President, there is a Cabinet, there is a Chief of the Armed Forces, there is a Chief of Navy. And I was very happy I was going to a big country. And when I look at the fact sheet and the number of people there, I'm sure all of you must be aware of the population of Seychelles. Could anyone wildly guess? 80,000 people. And that is the fastest growing economy there. They have a maritime boundary of about 8,000 square kilometers or something. No, not the coastline, but the territorial, huge, I believe. The question is, and when I landed at the airport, I saw a 777 there, I saw a 380 there, everything possible there. And when we compare to ourselves, we are 1,272 million people. So look at it, and when we discuss politics, I have an opportunity to travel across the world. When you look at this auditorium, such auditoriums do exist in cruise liners. And there are 5-star ships floating on the sea. And when you get on the ship, you see the possibility of, I don't know, not many Indians do travel, but recently they have started. We look at Sweden, Greece, look at the top 10 ship owning countries in the world. I don't think India figures in less than 10 of them. I don't read so much, but I guess so. Actually, this whole maritime economy, this whole strength of our economy that is untapped in India, where we have experts around, you all have been on the seas for so long, and this is the largest volume of trade and other things. But we at our level are failing to address issues. When I was talking about the National Skills Qualification Framework, if you talk to me about a welder, before I came to this ministry, I thought the welder was a man who used to make grills for us, gates for us, and small steel works. But today, if you ask me, under the NSQF, one is a welder which I have said. The second is a category of a welder who, in Tata Motors or Hyundai Motors assembly line the sachet. There is a girl or a boy who is differently dressed, he has a different torch. His working conditions are different. He puts 6 stitches on the sachet and the line moves. His job is different, he is also a welder. There is a third category of welder who works in a Hazira Bijapur gas pipeline. Now his torch is different, his safety conditions are different, his working conditions are different. But he's also a welder of a different category using different material and different working conditions. And if I have to talk about the fourth category of a welder, is a man who goes deep in the sea, in the oil rigs. So he has to be a scuba diver, his torch is different. Or those people who go under the ship to repair. His qualifications are different, his civil requirements are different. He is also a welder. But this distinction is generally not understandable because we in the education system earlier, we never thought all these matters. Now we are trying to qualify them. You didn't introduce me, I'm a pilot too. I don't fly big planes. And if I have to say the NSQA for a A320 pilot is that I have to be a type rated, first should have done my commercial pilot, then I have to be a type rating, then MET course and navigation. But each in itself, or the communications, each in itself is good enough as a vertical to become an air traffic controller if he knows MET and if he knows navigation. If it's just a CPL, he can become an instructor in a flying club. But if you have all 4 of them, the NSQF to become a pilot on a 777 or 737 or A320 is an NSQF pack, which is makes it different. But this was not understandable, and this, which should have happened in this country 65 years ago, we are trying to build it up to explain how it is to happen. But I understand all this, and I'm happy about it that the partnership for skills and this maritime economy, the blue economy, what we are talking is first someone will have to tell me what is the exact coastline of India. I started with reading from 6,500, now it has got to 7,200. So please, someone must get back to me because I change figures every time. I do not know, but every time I see it varies 1,000 to 1,500 kilometers is varying. So maybe because of the Andaman's coastline. I do not know how it is captured, but Chief, we must come to a figure which is absolutely correct so that we can speak about it across the world. But nonetheless, that is we have a huge potential in the sector, where it's marine engineering, shipbuilding, coastline, port infrastructure, port logistics, allied services. Even if I talk about logistics, I do not know this, I would like to connect it. I come from the state of Bihar, which was undivided, Bihar and Jharkhand. The first telco trucks which came out in this country was in Jamshedpur, Tata Nagar. Last 21 years, we do not have a single driver which has come on a heavy vehicle from both the states, which is divided now, because we do not have a training institution to certify and recognize them. Imagine a place where first telco trucks came up in this country, and a population of between the police about 200 million people. There's not one driver's training center. Tomorrow morning, I require about 2 lakh drivers for Ola and Uber. I don't have a training center in this country. And when you talk about the logistics sector, we have required about 6 million drivers in the logistics sector. We do not have a formal training institution. We have riff-raff here, we have some locations. You look at anything, the logistics for the maritime economy is so huge and it requires such specialized manpower. Even when you travel in the cruises across the world, if 100 in a cruise which carries 5,000 people, 3,000 passengers, 2,000 staff, and if you screen the staff, which is the helper category, would be about 1,500. On every 100 children you find on the ship would be from Malaysia, from Indonesia, from Singapore, but hardly 1 or 2 would be from Goa as a chef or something like that. So there's a great potential of partnership. I was recently in a ship launch in Kolkata. There was a naval ship which had to be launched. And the number of people who get involved in ship building across and with the maritime post, which we are talking about, is huge. But we have a great potential. But at the same time, when we talk about sustainable development, we talk about pollution, we talk about climate change, and all these factors. So I'm very happy that we have picked up a subject. And I have to be a partner of it all throughout, because most of my ministers are very upset with me. They find me poaching into their territory always. Some of the ministers are very good and kind, they allow me to do so, but others are very upset because still takes away all the flavor of everything today. But that's my job, because I have to make it aspirational and I have to make it look good and make it look as if it's part of an education system. But I must say that this conference, which your foundation is about 12 years old now, is definitely going to build up a mechanism. And while all this is going on, I have requested Admiral Thoman to organize an international skill conference on blue economy and on maritime activities, which has never happened in this country, because there's a huge potential. And I'm sure most of you at some point of time would retire and would love to do things which possibly would be more exciting to get back, and I think we'll pave the foundation for that. So thank you very much for inviting me. Not that I have to much speak about this, because I had the concept paper, but this field is absolutely new to me, and most of what you will talk here would be interacting and understanding. But I can tell the Prime Minister has been repeatedly talking to us about this particular sector, and I would definitely like to have a sector skill council, which in the maritime sector is with, I do not know, with engineering, but this is the. So I would request the foundation to think how to build up the sector skill council, which possibly would create the qualification packs and the nurses and the job rules in this sector, which would be identifiable across the country. So this is one thing which is so important, and which we have been able to do for construction, for automotives, for leather, for textiles, for even agriculture. We are creating the nurses and the QPs which are required to do the training, which is the curriculum and the process of assessment, and finally the outcomes, and then subsequently the certification which is there. So having said this, I must congratulate the whole team and the foundation to have organized this activity. But nonetheless, we should not stop here. I'm sure one operational level thing which we can carry forward is the skilling part, which of course we are moving very aggressively, and we hope to catch up again once again at the international conference for skilling in maritime activities, which possibly be. And thank you, Chief Lamba. You have taken a lot of interest in it. You are pursuing what has been left behind as a legacy. I'm sure many more activities which we are going to build up from the civilian side to marry with the naval forces would go a long way in seeing that this country gets what it deserves the best. Thank you very much.